Today on the Tearsheet Podcast.
So we've done over almost $8 billion of unsecured loans over the course of Avant's existence to consumers. We've had, I think nearly 2 million overall transactions with consumers. So that's a lot of data. And so what we've been able to do over time is continue to expand our ability to underwrite, beyond where we've been most recently.
Welcome to the Tearsheet Podcast. I'm Tearsheet Editor-in-Chief, Zack Miller. At nearly 8 years old, Avant is one of the pioneers in online lending. It has expanded its product set over the years to include banking functions for middle-income consumers. James Paris is the CEO of Avant and joins us on the podcast to talk about the growth of the company and the opportunities it has to fill a market gap serving its demographic. James previously led the firm's creation of the Avant technology platform, which as a B2B lending technology platform was spun off earlier this year. James Paris is my guest today on the Tearsheet Podcast.
Great to be here. I'm James Paris. I'm the CEO of Avant. I've been at Avant for a little over 5 years, and Avant is about 7.5 years old. We're a digital direct-to-consumer digital bank where we've got a number of lending and credit products today and continuing to expand on those. So again, thanks for having me. Great to be here.
It's great to have you, James. And I'd like to talk about your background at Avant because I think that speaks to the evolution the firm is having alongside you or because of you. So can we talk about sort of your trajectory and what you were brought in to do and what you've done through your career there?
Yeah, absolutely. So I came to Avant originally focused very much around how the business was going to be funded, everything from equity to debt funding, to loan sales. And so maybe just a quick touch on the business. So Avant was founded 7.5 years ago, focused on middle-class, near-prime consumers that effectively were not being banked really very well by the traditional banks. Some brick-and-mortar players were out there, but nobody really doing it effectively from a digital standpoint. So we launched initially with a personal unsecured loan product. Since then, we've launched a credit card product about 3 years ago, which is actually becoming quite big. We've got more credit card customers than loan customers today. Recently, an auto product. But originally, I came in, back to your question, to focus around the funding for the company. So we raised an equity round in the fall of 2015. It was the last time we've raised equity because Avant's actually become profitable in the ensuing years. And then in addition to that, designing sort of our approach around credit facilities, securitizations, whole loan sales, and sort of the mix of all of those things to create, stability and a long, sort of a long runway for the company. We're a little bit different from some others from the standpoint that we actually embrace having assets on the balance sheet. And we think that helps us, sort of ride our way through different periods of volatility in the capital markets and in the real economy. But after sort of spending a fair amount of time working on our approach to all those things, I was able to take on a kind of a broader strategic role. And we identified some opportunities as we were thinking about how to partner with big banks, because one of the things that we recognized pretty early on and how we positioned the company to go to try to serve near prime middle class customers was that it was not a customer base that was being served well by the banks, and part of that was structural. So from a regulatory standpoint, the additional capital that's required by banks to effectively serve those customers is fairly prohibitive, and so we thought that was a good structural barrier. We saw that the banks had real issues with their digital offerings, but we thought over time they'd overcome some of those tech challenges and be in a position to serve customers well. And we didn't really like the idea of competing with their near zero cost of capital from the standpoint of having insured federal deposits. So that was part of the fundamental strategy around how we set up Avant. Now, as we were out talking to banks, because we realized that they probably can't lend to 2/3 of their deposit customers because they're not in that super prime category. What we discovered was that there was actually a strong desire by the banks to be able to serve customers digitally, and not so much maybe partner with us to sort of send their customers our way. And that was really the birth of the Amount business, where we started to work with banks to build digital customized modular platforms for them. And so I spent a lot of time and helped build up that business over a few years. And then about a year and a half ago, came back to Avant basically as president with a path to becoming CEO. So it's been an awesome 5.5 years getting to do a lot of different things.
Awesome. And thank you for that. And I'm glad you started with an overview of Avant's business. Just before we leave Amount, can you talk about, I guess, how you've launched that? I guess you spun it off at the beginning of this year technically, and where's that business and what's your viewpoint on how that business is going?
Yeah, absolutely. We spun it off on January 1st, as you said. It's a separate company now, and we've had 2 successful independent equity raises just on the Amount business since that spin out. So those were both recently announced, and the business is so very well positioned from a capitalization standpoint, and is very focused on building digital platforms for banks that can be used across a number of key products for consumers. So that would include lending products, credit card products, deposit products, point of sale products, which are in development today with a number of banks. And so Amount's got customers that have been publicly announced that include TD Bank, PNC, HSBC, BBVA, Banco Popular, and then a handful of others that we have not yet publicly announced. So very excited about the developments going on with that business. And they're really a critical supplier to Avant as well. So they provide
that was going to be my next question.
Yeah, a lot of the key back-end technology really that was developed over years and years within Avant is not bespoke to this near prime category per se. It's there's a lot of really advanced techniques around digital fraud prevention, account verification, and those kinds of processes that have been digitized and done in a way that provides a really good customer experience with as little friction as possible, that can be utilized across a range of products for a bank or for a non-bank like Avant. So they're a critical supplier to us, and they've got a number of other bank clients as well, and the business is doing great.
Awesome. So let's come back to Avant. And you talked about, sort of the expansion away from a monoline into other financial products. Can you talk, I guess, about the credit card product and the genesis of that, and I guess how that aligns with the general mandate of Avant?
Absolutely. That's a question that we could talk about for probably the entire time. So I think, although we won't, but the credit card product we launched about 3 years ago, and we intentionally positioned it to sit sort of adjacent to the loan product, meaning from an overall demographic standpoint. If you think about it in terms of FICO, which we don't use for underwriting, but it's a good reference point. The loan business on a weighted average basis has about a 650 FICO score average, whereas the credit card business is in the 620 to 625 range. So for Avant, it's a few different considerations came into play in thinking about a credit card. Number one, the loan product is really solving a distinct need at a point in time where somebody's got a major purchase, or something happened, maybe the roof repair or something like that they've got a need for funds that's urgent, and we're happy to help with that on the loan product. The credit card is very different, as I think everybody knows. It's a utility in your wallet, or something you can use in an e-commerce setting over and over again. And for us, we wanted to be able to supply products that meet multiple customer needs over time. And so our vision, as you asked about, is to be really the premier digital bank for the near prime middle class consumer. So we think that it's essential to have a credit card product in the mix to be able to do that. Similarly, we've launched an auto product as well, and we see the opportunity to develop that more. But on the credit card side, we see a big opportunity because the credit card's positioned just a little bit down market from the loan product. So as we see customers performing well and we get better and better underwriting in that category, we're able in some cases to graduate customers to where they'd be eligible for a loan product because of our unique perspective on them, with what we've seen with the credit card performance that they've had. So we're excited about the opportunities to effectively, from our standpoint, cross-sell the products in both directions to customers and be able to meet customers' needs on both a one-time, larger dollar amount basis or on an ongoing basis. So we're very excited about those opportunities. And on the credit card side, we've seen just tremendous growth. So this year, we'll wind up issuing somewhere in the neighborhood of about 240,000 cards, which was relative to our plan this year of 250,000. So we had quite a bit of disruption from COVID in the first half of the year, but really demand recovered in a very substantial way, and performance has been really solid. And so we've seen a tremendous amount of growth. We intend to keep that going, and we've got a number of investments we're making where we plan to actually expand the breadth of the credit card offering. And we're going to be including additional products within the credit card offering, both for a little bit of a more upmarket product with features like rewards, cashback, promotional offers, as well as something that's more aimed at sort of emerging credit and thin file customers. So we just see a tremendous opportunity for growth. There's a lot of white space, we think, in the credit card category that is positioned really in that near prime arena, as opposed to in the deeper subprime area where there's quite a few competing cards, and that's really not our market.
So I have a question for you, I guess, and your last answer alluded to this. As you're expanding the product portfolio, it sounds like a little bit you're both the cross-selling or sort of lateral moving of products to an existing customer, but it also sounds like you're kind of expanding the pie as well. How do you think about that as you're thinking about launching new products?
Yeah, you're right. It is what we're doing. We've done over almost $8 billion of unsecured loans over the course of Avant's existence to consumers. We've had, I think nearly 2 million overall transactions with consumers. So that's a lot of data. And so what we've been able to do over time is continue to expand our ability to underwrite, beyond where we've been most recently. And so what we do is we've got a very structured program from a governance and a testing standpoint around both product changes, underwriting changes, marketing changes. And so we're able to run very controlled tests where we'll authorize, 5% of the volume for this period of time to be issued under this alternate policy. And then we're able to sort of let that bake over 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, whatever we determine is appropriate for a given test. And then we sort of see, well, what do we learn, and should we make some modifications? And so we're continuously testing, and it's a way for us to continue to expand the pie, essentially, as you say.
Interesting. So can you mentioned the auto product. Can you talk a little bit more about what that is? That wasn't actually correct grammar, but can you talk a little bit more about that? And sort of what the thinking is there, and maybe how that product, fits into the rest of the portfolio, and maybe differentiate, if it does differentiate itself from other products on the market.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's early days for us. As I said, we're effectively in a pilot today, so we haven't issued a lot of loans, but we're gathering data. And similar to our credit card business, where it probably took us, a good 12 months of making sure that the volume was relatively low as we experimented a little bit in terms of different marketing channels and different underwriting approaches to figure out what was a good intersection between customer demand and our own, strategies from a product and underwriting standpoint. So I think we'll follow a pretty similar path on the auto front. Where we're heading with this, where we think we'd like to get to, is to be able to refinance existing auto loans on a direct-to-consumer basis, and in many cases where we think there could be a significant benefit to the consumer in terms of additional cash back from a proceeds standpoint in connection with that refinancing. So maybe you've got a $10,000 or $15,000 loan, and it's refinanced with $5,000 into the consumer's pocket without a dramatic increase in their monthly payments, because you're able to extend out the maturity a bit. We don't see a lot of that kind of product offering in the market, particularly in a digital format where that's something that's available to customers. So we're always looking for markets where we think there's a bit of an imbalance between demand and supply. That's where we landed and positioned our credit card product, and we see the same kind of opportunity on the auto side. So ultimately, this is all about being able to deliver the products that consumers use the most and need the most, and specifically with this near prime category. So credit cards and auto loans are about as eponymous as you can get when it comes to a financial product that is used by your everyday consumers. So to us, they're critical as a means of continuing to round out our offering to our customers, and also the data that we have historically. So we know exactly, which of our customers have auto loans, because we're able to see that on their credit reports. And so there's a pretty big, as we develop our own customer base larger and larger, and I think today we have about 650,000, 700,000 active customers on the platform, that ability to sort of give them sort of curated, bespoke opportunities and offers, we think is pretty powerful as well. And so that's something we're working towards.
So you have a lot on your plate. We're getting to the end of the conversation. Interested in what you think like the biggest opportunities are for you next year. Like, what are you working on? What's in the pipeline? Like, where are you steering the company in 2021?
Sure. Well, we talked about some of it. A big part of it's going to be continuing to grow the credit card business, as we talked about, going in some different directions there, and hopefully, doubling it again next year. I think in addition to that, we touched on auto. The other really big one for us, both as a company and the broader market or ecosystem, I think, is the point of sale product. It's really exploding, both in terms of installment products, available at the point of sale to finance purchases, as well as products that are, sort of split pay, afterpay type products. And so that's a big opportunity and a big market. And we think that with COVID, there's been obviously an acceleration in sort of all things digital and e-commerce, and you're certainly seeing it in that space as well. So we're going to be really excited to be bringing those products to market. And I think Avant's well positioned in that regard, because our skill set in underwriting in that near prime middle class category, there's not a lot of players that really do that well. And so I think we represent a good opportunity potentially to partner with other lenders that are maybe more interested in that super prime customer. So we're working on a few deals that are structured in that way, and excited about some launches we have coming up in 2021 on the point of sale front. The other thing that I would say is, we have been spending a lot of time around evaluating deposit products as well. That's a space that's where a lot is happening, a number of different approaches, and something we continue to think hard about, both with respect to whether that's something we'd want to build or buy or partner. And so, excited about some, hopefully, developments on that front in 21 as well.
James, great talking to you, and thanks for joining us on Tearsheet Podcast today.
It was my pleasure. Thanks so much for having us.